Okay, now it's time to get onto the attack animation, the maybe objectively more fun and interesting part. So let's have a look at the sword and shield slash. So here it is. Remember, we called the animation attack, and we had our preview down here of our character doing a slice. Now what we need to do first, I reckon, is get this animation in and working before we tweak its properties to get it feeling good. It's hard to tweak the properties now before we can really visualize how it looks. So back in the animator, we are going to go ahead and add a new state. Right click, create state. We're going to left click on it, and we're going to call it, up the top, attack. Now in the motion, we need to plug in our attack animation, and we need a few transition states. So for example, where do we want it to be able to blend or transition from? Definitely the idle, walk, and run, right? So we're going to right click, make transition into the attack. And of course, when we're finished attacking, we need to be able to transition back to that. But we've also got to be a bit careful here, because we also want to be able to transition out from the fidget. So if our character starts fidgeting, we, at this stage, won't necessarily be able to get to this attack unless we add it to a condition. So let's just start with this, and we'll figure out all the errors and kinks after we get this working. So we've hooked up the attack in and out. And now what we need to do is make another condition. And this time, we're going to add a new parameter. But instead of a Boolean, a true or false, we are going to use a trigger. Now the difference is, a Boolean is set to true, and then after a time you could set it to false, so on and so forth. A trigger is just a single notify that will activate something. It doesn't need to be turned off afterwards. It just activates for a single frame, right? So it's like a flag. So we're going to call this attacking. Now on the in transition, we're going to say add a new condition. The condition is attacking. On the exit transition, we don't necessarily need a condition for this. We used a trigger for this, which means we can't put attacking because it's not a Boolean, right? It doesn't have a true or false. Instead, we should just let the animation play out to its full conclusion, which means we're going to leave this has exit time on for now, right? So I click, it attacks. That attack cannot be cancelled. It's going to complete in full, and then once it has finished, it will automatically transition back to our blend. So let's leave that for now. At this point, what we want to do is head on back to our script. Okay, so back in Visual Studio, remember we made a variable previously called attack timer, and now we want to use that. If you are more familiar with Unity, you could use a different Unity function or C# function, maybe something like a coroutine. But we're going to keep it simple by just using another if-based timer. So at first we're going to say attack timer minus equals time.delta time semicolon. Great. Then underneath we're going to say if round brackets input dot get key down. Get key down specifically, not get key, right? Get key down means trigger once as the key goes down, whereas get key does it every frame. Okay, and here we want to say key code dot mouse 0. Mouse 0, if you hover over it, it says the left or primary mouse button. Now between these round brackets, we want to add to this if statement. Okay, and we also want to say and, so you've got to left click and your attack timer must be less than or equal to 0, meaning your attack is, it's primed. But also, so we can't attack mid-air, we want to go and grounded. Now grounded is a ball that was added here by Unity. And they've set it up elsewhere in the script to read that if you have solid contact with a blocking object, you're grounded. Okay, now in this if statement, we're going to say underscore animator dot set trigger. Because remember, we made a trigger this time, not a boolean. Round brackets, parentheses, attacking. Make sure you get the naming exactly correct to the trigger you set in the animator. Oh, forgot my semicolon. There we go. Okay, underneath, we're also going to say attack timer equals 0.75 F, meaning we've got to wait nearly an entire second before we can attack again. The lower you make this value, the faster you will be able to attack. The higher you make the value, the longer you'll have to wait between each attack. Save that. Okay, let's see if this is working. Let's close that. Let's hit play. And let's have a look. Left click. Nothing happening right now. So, we're first going to make sure that we actively, because I didn't see it compile, I'm actively going to hit Control S, go back into Unity, and make sure it doesn't need to compile. No, that seems okay. Next thing I'm going to do is check the animator. Did I spell the attacking correctly? Yes, I did. Did I set it in the transition? Yes, I did. Did I actually assign the attack animation? Yes, I did. Okay, that's fine. Okay, let me try it one more time just to make sure. Oh, interesting. Okay. So it is working. It's just a little janky. I think the problem lies in the animator. So let's go back there. This is a common problem. If I go into the in transition of attack, what we see here is has exit time. It's got me again. This thing will get you all the time. So what it's doing is it's waiting for the full idle, walk, or run animation to finish before entering attack. Now that's a problem. So we turn exit time off. Let's try it again. There we go. Now we can just cancel that animation. But there's something a little bit weird, right? Because check that out. What we want to do is make a few improvements. First of all, that is the most limp sword swing I've ever seen. No one will enjoy attacking enemies with a sword swing like that. Take my word for it. What we want to do is speed this thing up. So in the animator, I'm going to click on the attack, and I'm going to set the speed 1.25. So I'm going to speed it up 25%. Then in the animation asset itself, sword and shield slash, you'll see here it has a timeline, a length. Now if I hit play, see there's a lot of wind up at the start of that attack. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of wind up if I'm not trying to create a combat system that is more akin to like a Souls-like, right, where timing is very important. But maybe if I'm doing an arcade slasher, I want that to be very snappy. So to cut off a lot of the start transition of this attack, I'm going to take this slider and I'm going to scrub it in about 0.05. And a lot of that wind up or anticipation is now cut off. So I'm going to hit save. I forgot to apply it. So let's do that. Okay. feeling a lot snappier already. There's one other problem now. Check this out. That rotation is very odd, isn't it? He's like slashing off to the side. And this is a common problem between using animations that are made for different rigs. So we're using the Unity default humanoid rig, but we're using the Paladin Mixamo rig animations. And like blending between two different rigs is what's causing some strange behavior. Now, to minimize that, what we need to do is go into the sword and shield slash, and we may need to adjust some of these attributes here. For example, for the root transform rotation, we baked it into the pose based upon the body orientation. But I may try switch that to the original rotation and hit apply. That's better. So instead of using the rotation of the Paladin rig, it's now using the original rotation of the Unity humanoid rig, meaning that slash is staying forward. Cool. These can be a little difficult to wrap your head around if you don't have a lot of rigging or animation experience. If you've never rigged or animated a character before, this may seem like hoodoo or nonsensical. Best way I can explain it is, do you want your rig to define its motion and rotation, or do you want the animation to define its rotation and position? The best thing you can do is, if you don't really understand it conceptually, is just to try them all, right? Turn them on, turn them off, keep playing it. The best thing you can do is play the game and just make sure that it feels right. Well, now that we've got that underway, we've still got one problem to solve, and that is the fact that I can attack while moving. Now, this is something that needs to be handled in the script, and there are probably far more elegant ways of doing it. But to keep it nice and simple, I'm going to head back into Visual Studio, and underneath the if statement where we grabbed the attack, what we want to do from here is essentially check if our attack timer is greater than 0, so we are attacking. Our move speed needs to turn off, and then if it's not, then it needs to turn back on. So we're going to say if round brackets attack timer is greater than 0, squigglies, move speed. Now, move speed is a variable inside of the script already defined by Unity, okay? Equals 0.0f. I'm going to add a comment here. Roots player while attacking. Now hit enter, because move speed is for our walking, but this controller also uses a variable called sprint speed for running, and you need to do both of these. Underneath that, we can say else, because if it has not met that condition, then we want to set those things back to what they were before, which I'll just tell you now because I've looked at the script, was, oops, not 20, 2.0f for move speed, and sprint speed was 5.335f. I'm sure there is a mathematical reason why that is such a strange number. Okay, hit Control S to save and head back into your play window. Let's hit play and let's test it. Okay, running around, la-di-da, left click, cool, perfect. So of course, feel free to modify that attack or try out some other attacks from Mixamo, see what you like. You know, a simple slash is your bread and butter, but I have no doubt that some of you are going to probably put in some of the more extravagant attacks or dance emotes. You know, have fun with it. You just need to kind of run around, you know, spam a little bit in air, spam a little bit on the ground. Give it a good test, you know, try to break it, because trying to break it will show you whether it is robust.